Frank, welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
So for those of you who don't know, Frank Turley is a very experienced project manager with, I think, about 15 years of experience. But he focuses his time now on helping project managers to become better at their craft. He trains project managers and is the co-developer of P3 Express. And I've already spoken with Frank on the channel about P3 Express, so do have a look at that video. But as well as being the co-creator of P3 Express, he is also a trainer who likes to be known as the PRINCE2 Guy from time to time, and leads two fantastic training programs on the PRINCE2 Foundation and PRINCE2 Practitioner courses. So that's why I wanted to speak with you, Frank, about PRINCE2.
Thank you.
Welcome back. And perhaps you can start us off with an overview of what exactly is PRINCE2.
Okay. So in simple terms, PRINCE2 is a framework or a methodology that's supposed to make it easy for you to follow, to do projects. That's basically what it is. Yeah. And it's quite a good framework. I mean, it's big, of course. It's well structured. There are lots of documents in there. And it's the most recognizable project management certification in Europe. And it has been around for many, many years. So that's why it's so popular, at the moment. I think it's still the #1 project management certification in Europe at the moment.
That's interesting, because I've always thought of PRINCE2 as mainly UK and to an extent Commonwealth countries. So I'm interested that you say it's popular across Europe.
At the moment, I'm living in Belgium. So it's the #1 in Belgium. It's the #1 in Holland. In Scandinavia, it's very important as well. Even the manual is available like in Norwegian and Danish. It's good and it's well known in Sweden. In Germany, probably a little bit less known than the other countries, but it is gaining some impact there as well. And of course, you're right. All the English-speaking countries across the world also have a good relationship with PRINCE2 as well.
Yeah, I suppose less so in the States, but the Commonwealth countries like Canada and New Zealand and Australia, very big. What about Southern Europe? You've not mentioned the Southern European countries. Is it for them, or do they not so much use PRINCE2?
It's not huge, actually. And the good way of seeing that is the manuals are not in Italian, and the Spanish one was even late, coming out the last time. So it's not huge. The amount of exams in Spain or Spanish-speaking countries like South America is really low compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah. So I guess part of what will be driving the kind of statistics you've alluded to is the kind of projects, the kind of project managers that it's well suited for. I think it's a tired old thing to say, well, PRINCE2 is either brilliant or it's rubbish. It's neither. It is well suited to a certain type of project. In your experience, what sort of project managers, what sort of projects should be looking at PRINCE2 as a basic method, an appropriate methodology for them?
Okay, so let me take a step back there a little bit. The most common reason people do a PRINCE2 certification, or of course, is because they want to get the certification on their CV and LinkedIn account. That's it. That's really, which is a pity, because it's a big learning curve to get a certification, but then they never really get a chance to use it, which is hard, and sometimes even the way that it's trained is often not so good either, because the focus is on passing the exam, which is okay, but it would be better for the world if the focus was more on using it and getting more from it, and helping the company and giving you confidence that you can do the project as well.
Yeah.
Okay. But now going back to your question, PRINCE2 can be used for any type of project. Some people think it's only for IT, and then there's also some other people think it's not for IT, because then you need Agile only for IT, but PRINCE2 can be used in any type of project.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just mention, there is something called, normally you have PRINCE2 normal flavor, and then you have the new vanilla flavor, which is called PRINCE2 Agile.
Yeah.
And PRINCE2 Agile is for me, it's more like a marketing idea where they wanted to use the name Agile in the certification.
Yeah.
But normal PRINCE2 was Agile from the beginning, and that just confuses the whole market. So I'm not a big fan of PRINCE2 Agile, because normal PRINCE2 works fine, and you can customize it in suit, and you can run IT projects and working in an agile way.
Yeah. I suppose the simple fact is that PRINCE2 is not methodology, it's approach agnostic. As I understand it, it's a wrapper around whatever approach you choose to take. And historically, it was designed for IT projects. It was back in, what was it, the 70s when CCTA took it on, and it moved from prompt to Prince, and it was an IT methodology. And so I think it's an interesting point that you make. We should not be thinking of it as purely for predictive projects because of the way it is. I think of PRINCE2 as being particularly good for high governance projects where you want to get a lot of reliability into the governance process and the accountabilities. So is that still a factor in selecting PRINCE2 as an overall approach for your project?
All right. Well, it's actually to run any kind of project in any company, you need a certain amount of governance. Okay, so you need high management to be able to make decisions. You need to be able to pass those decisions down in a structured way. You need to be able to pass up information so they can keep making good decisions. And PRINCE2 has a nice process to follow, and which facilitates that, and any good methodology, not just PRINCE2, should be able to do that as well. And PRINCE2 is not the only one, of course. There are many more on the market. So governance, or basic governance, about interfacing the people who do the work to the above decision makers is very important. But it does have a history, of course, with the UK government. And like anything, I think the whole way that PMI started as well was with the American Army. So, they step in and try to structure it and standardize it. So it helps a lot. So it's good.
Excellent. So you've mentioned that it's got the processes that help with creating the structure. So could you give us an overview of what you consider to be the key features of PRINCE2 and how it works and how it does what it does?
Okay. So the good thing about PRINCE2 is it kind of gives you a path through the project. So it says, okay, these are the decisions or things you should take into account even before the project starts. Okay, like show me the business case. Where is it? Is this a real good project even to start, or should we actually stop it? It's like a pre-gate, and that's good. So when I teach it, I always give the idea that maybe we've got 10 ideas, but only one of them or two of them get through the gate and they start a project. Then that's good. I like that alone. Then we have what we call the initiation phase, which I keep calling the planning phase because that's what it is. And that's where you break down the project in detail. And the biggest task of the project manager there is facilitation, And the way it's taught, PRINCE2, some people think the project manager has to do all the work themselves, but they don't. They just have to facilitate it. And that's a key skill for a project manager to actually do. And then if you have the right people in the room with you, or in all the different workshops that you have, then of course you will have a good idea of what's in scope, and more importantly, what's out of scope. And then it's up to you then to pass certain information up to get a decision, whether should we continue or not. And then you run the project in what PRINCE2 calls stages, or 2 monthly cycles of the most popular time frame that's actually mentioned. And then it's day-to-day management of the project manager, walking around and checking to see is everything okay. That's PRINCE2.
And you've already demonstrated why it works with Agile. It's those kind of cycles or stages. It's baked into the approach methodology, and I like that about it. It also has, and I guess it's topical for anyone who's watching who comes from a PMI background, it also has had 7 principles since long before the PMI thought of adding principles to its methodology. What can you tell us about how those principles work?
Okay, so you're right. It's got 7 principles, and even those principles are great because they're the real driving force behind your decision making and everything you should do. So there are certain things, or I'll give you an example. If a project manager walks into a new project because the existing project manager has left, if he brings in 7 questions related to those principles and asks those questions directly, it puts them into a very good mind for the project. So questions like, where's the business case?
Yeah.
Is there really still a business value behind this project?
Okay.
Yeah. That's a great question to ask.
Yeah.
Then who's who in the project? And do each person know or have a good idea on what the expectations from the other person is? Okay.
Yeah.
How are we managing in project in chunks? Or do we believe that we can plan everything from the beginning and then hope to be and have a detailed plan for the whole project? Or do we have common sense and go, no, we have a basic idea what might happen, but we know very well that's not going to happen. But we do plan in detail, bit by bit. So it's things like that. And the other one which I like as well is don't start something unless you know what you're going to do. So whenever you're giving out a deliverable to be created, finish the documentation beforehand. So the people who are doing it will know when to stop, working, and that's so things like that. Those are really, really great. So I really like their principles.
And actually that's completely new on me. I've been aware of the principles. I know the principles well, but to actually think of them as the basis of the questions you should be asking at the outset. I like that idea. But I'm going to pick you up on something there. You said one of the principles: don't start something until you know what is, exactly what it is you're doing. If I were, let's say, a cartoon agilist, I would say, well, hang on a moment. Agile, you don't have to know exactly how things are going to turn out. You start something, you work it through, and then if it doesn't work out the way you want to, you go through another iteration and another increment, and you fix it and you make it better. So how do you reconcile that with your understanding of Agile?
Thank you. Well, actually, it works in the very, very same way. So let's say you're trying to design a building, okay? And there's no way you're going to know what the outside of the building is look like. Well, you're going to say, okay, in the next iteration, our design is going to reach these kind of goals, okay? So you write them. And even though what's going to be shipped at the end of it, it's going to change a lot in the future, there's an agreement on what's going to happen at the end of the month, So that vagueness is written down and it is made clear so that people don't go off topic. I presume you've heard of the expression, think outside the box, okay?
Yeah.
Well, I do not like that expression for the following reason, because if you think outside the box, then all people within the project will come up with ideas that do not bring your project forward or your idea forward or your deliverable forward. What they're doing is they're bringing you off track. So you always define what the box is. You'd say, this is our idea for design of the project. This is for this building. This is what we know right now. So let's get 2 or 3 designs which fit this kind of constraints. And that's our box. So if you want to come up with any ideas that fit inside that box, great, fantastic. But don't come up with something which is outside that, because that's going to put us away in a different direction. So we're not moving forward, we're moving sideways. So Prince2 is very, very like Agile in that respect. Yeah. So
fundamentally, that knowing what it is you're doing, I think Agile will call it definition of done. It can apply within a cycle, right? It doesn't have to be everything defined right at the start of the project for the end. It's a final product. Let's say that maybe there were 3 iterations of training material. You have your first draft, your second draft, and your third draft. But there is an expectation before people start delivering draft 1 of what draft 1 might look like. And then you say, okay, well, these are the improvements we expect to see in draft 2. Okay, great. And then draft 3 is your finished product. And each time before you give out the work, you update the specifications so they match. So you've given us great insights into the processes and the principles. So I think it'd be remiss of me not to ask you for your perceptions of the 7 themes. Okay. So Prince2 has 7 principles, 7 themes, and 7 processes. Okay. And the 7 themes are what somebody decided to pick out as the most important subject areas to go into. And I think they've done a good job. Like every project needs a business case, and they give good tips on writing a business case and who should be involved and the type of information which is actually put into it. The same with organization breakdown. Well, actually, it should be called organization and communication, because the word organization is no good on its own. But the communication plan is part of it as well. So if I was king of Prince2 for a day, I
I would change the title of that, you know. Then, of course, every project has risk management, and I like the way Prince2 does risk management.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite one is quality. I really like the way that they bring quality into the planning, and it's all linked whenever you do a product specification, that its quality requirements go in there. So I really, really like that one. Then you have, of course, change. Because every project or a daily task for a project manager is to deal with issues and changes, and that works out quite well as well. So yeah, I like the way Prince2 does it. It doesn't go into like too much detail. If you want more detail, then of course the PM book is there as a reference guide for you, but it's enough to know without overdoing it, let's say. So that's good. Yeah.
And the Prince2 manual, the managing successful projects with Prince2, it's a good guide to using Prince2. I don't think you choose it to learn project management from, but as a project manager who wants to find new ways of thinking about things and see how the Prince2 process works, I think it's a well crafted document now.
Yeah, it's a good document to read. It's a good reference manual. There's been a change in the policy of PeopleCert, and I hope one of them are listening to this. But
perhaps you can just, for those who aren't from PeopleCert, who are PeopleCert?
Okay, so PeopleCert is a body that actually own Prince2 now. So whenever you do your exam, you buy the exam from PeopleCert. Yeah. So they own the manual. They purchased it in a recent deal. So
so it's no longer Axelos.
Correct, yeah. So Axelos used to co-own it with a private company, and that was established with the UK government. And then at the end of last year, the PeopleCert just took over the whole lot.
I see.
So PeopleCert probably paid a bit too much money for it. So they have decided that they need to raise money, and one of the ways to raise money was the following. They have decided that to force every person doing a Prince2 Foundation exam to purchase the big reference manual for Prince2. Okay. Whoa. So the exam has gone up €100 because of this. So about £90, let's say. And the thing is, when I ever teach Prince2 Foundation, I say, keep away from that big manual because it'll just confuse you. It's meant as a reference manual, not as a training manual. I just feel sorry for anybody picking up that book.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've taken us in the direction now of the certification. And I think you're right. There are some people who will do the certification to get the certification. And there will be some people who do it because they need it for the work they choose to do, because their employers use Prince2. And there will be some who do it because they want to formalize their learning. But whatever your reasons, there is a clear process. So can you just talk us through how the certification works at the moment?
Well, there are two parts to it. You have Prince2 Foundation and Prince2 Practitioner. The foundation is more of an overview where you learn the basic vocabulary and you have an idea of what happens within a project. And it's a nice cert. I like the Prince2 Foundation certification because it gives you a story on how a Prince2 project works. Then we have the Prince2 Practitioner, which should actually follow the word practitioner, to practice Prince2. Now, when I did my course a long time ago in Prince2 Practitioner course, I expected to go in and practice a project. And the very first day we went in, we quickly ran over all the information. And then we took out the sample exams and we went through the sample exams. And I was going like, what, are you serious? This is all we're going to do? I could have done this at home. Yeah. But that's how Prince2 Practitioner is taught by many companies still today, which is terrible, really bad. So you don't practice Prince2, you practice answering questions. And I think there's a little bit of, it's not very nice to offer that kind of a service to students who are studying. So if you want to practice Prince2, you've got to try to find your own project and go through all the documents yourself or speak to someone who's using Prince2 and ask them how they are doing it. You know, do not expect to find a training company to show you, because you won't. Yeah.
Well, I think we should say there are going to be some training companies that do train in different ways. Your own training course, which I've been through, I've watched a lot of the modules and I've reviewed a lot of the materials very carefully. And you have a distinct way of training, particularly the practitioner course, which involves a lot of dialogue between you and your colleague Nada. asking and answering questions and clarifying it. But what I like at the end is you've got two or three case studies that people can work through.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the M Plaza training packages, because those are the ones that you deliver, and they're the ones I recommend, because I agree there's a lot of very poor training out there, which is just training to the exam. It doesn't feel to me like following your course, I'm training to the exam. It seems to me like I'm learning how PRINCE2 works, which will equip me to do the exam. So tell us a bit more about your own course.
Okay, I'll approach it from this following point of view. I will approach it about how we approach it differently. So when we teach foundation, we do not try to teach chapter by chapter, because that will just kill you, because you don't know how to put all these pieces together. So the story of how a project works is really, really important. And we get this in right from the beginning. Yeah. And then I repeat everything about 3 to 4 times during the whole course. And that makes sure that you have the vocabulary, you have the consistency, and it's much easier to start remembering things. So that's good. Then during the online course as well, it's recorded. There is some like flashcards to help you to remember some stuff. And probably the biggest thing for many people is that we have a book which is very easy to read. We call it the PRINCE2 Foundation Training Manual. We make it part of the course, and that's really simple to read, and it's fully compatible with the course. And it's a great backup for people, because some people like to watch something, but some people like to browse and to read as well. And we include lots of examples in that book also, and that really helps us. And then the last thing we do, we have an exam simulator, which is really focused on the real exam and not just using the sample like Axelos questions, which are a little bit out of date, and give the wrong impression of the real exam. And as you said, we try to include more examples to make it easier for people to understand. Then now I'll jump onto the practitioner course. So the biggest mistake I think anybody can make with the practitioner course, if they decide to give an online course, is to read the manual back to the viewer. That would be terrible. That would be like death. Okay?
And zero added value.
Yeah. So what we've done, and you've pointed it out, we do not read the manual back. We know that the exam is based on scenario questions. So what are scenario questions? When you've got to think and act like a project manager. So I was able to come up with all these questions. I sat down next to Nader, who didn't know what question was coming up, but he's got a very good view, not just on PRINCE2, but on PMI or PMP and all the other project methodologies. So he did not use PRINCE2 in his answers. He just used normal project management logic in his answers. And he was able to explain that back and why. And because of that, then you're going like, I get it. And only very few times was PRINCE2 coming in with a different answer because of such a thing. But normally he was correct. And that's great insight. So you're like getting a consultant and a trainer at the same time, And then with the exam simulator as well, we really try to help people to focus on the type of questions that might come up. So that's how we differ.
Excellent. So I think probably the last question I've got is, if someone is considering the exams and the certification, am I right that in order to do the practitioner exam, you've got to have the foundation certification?
Yeah, you've got to have the foundation or some other advanced project management certification. Yeah. So
you can go into the practitioner if you've got an appropriate qualification, which begs the question, if I'm considering it, what considerations should I bring to bear deciding whether to go for the foundation certification or whether to go all in and aim myself at a practitioner qualification?
I always ask people why they're doing a certification. And if they just want a general knowledge, I say stick with PRINCE2 Foundation. That's enough. Because of the cost has gone up as well, it's maybe enough for most people, and they can just put PRINCE2 certified on their LinkedIn account. If they want to do a practitioner, I again ask them why, to make sure that it's really worth it for them, and what do they expect to get out of it? Because again, it's going to cost them much more, and the time it takes a big investment in time for them as well. And sometimes even though we will lose money from it because they're not going to buy the practitioner course from me, I say, well, maybe you should do actually a Scrum course, or maybe you should do a product owner course. Just with the with the foundation. And it all depends. Every person is slightly different.
Yeah. So what would you consider to be the right sort of reasons for doing the practitioner course?
If they really need it for their job, or if they know that the person who's hiring them knows about the PRINCE2 certification or practitioner certification, and that's going to be one of the prerequisites for a new job or for growing up in an organization. That's the main reason. Not many people get a chance to use it afterwards, which is a bit of a waste.
Yeah. I think absolutely right. If they need it for their job, that's the key to me, because the thing I always say to people is, oh, should I do a certification, this certification, that certification? I always say, you're a project manager, build a business case, research the job market where you want to be working. And if it will make you more likely to get the job you want, or if it will increase your salary, lifetime salary by more than the cost and the time, then there's a business case to do it. Otherwise, don't. And I think a lot of people just want an easy answer. You fit in this box, so you should or should not do it. But there's no substitute for doing the research. Yeah.
And there are other options. I mean, project management is not the only course that a project manager should do. Perhaps design thinking or storytelling or public speaking, or the big one for me is facilitation, but that's mostly practice as well. And Scrum, as I mentioned, or product owner. So all of those can actually help you to improve your path for project management.
Yeah. There is so much that project managers should be learning. I absolutely agree. So the last question before I ask you to tell us a bit about how people can get in touch with you. If I'm going to start learning PRINCE2 from scratch, what would be your top tips for me to help me succeed in my endeavor?
PRINCE2 from scratch, and try to get the story of PRINCE2 immediately. So see how a project works. And if you go on YouTube, you'll find a video from me where you can watch that. Just an overview or introduction to PRINCE2, Frank Turley, and I've got one about 20 minutes. Watch that 2 or 3 times, and you already have maybe 30% of the vocabulary that you need for the foundation exam. So that's a good way. There are very few sample projects which are out there, which are a real pity for PRINCE2. There are only 2 that I know of, and I've written both of them, but I wish more people would actually do it, because people like examples, people like to see it. And when I used to give classroom courses before COVID, the most common question was always, can we see a sample project? And we should do that more.
Yeah, splendid. So we'll put links to your PRINCE2 courses, your Plaza courses in the description. Because I have absolutely no qualifications in recommending them. I think they're the best courses out there, not least because your style of presentation and mine are very similar. We like to talk to the audience, not hide behind PowerPoint slides, and I think there's a lot of value in that for many people. But if people want to engage with you more generally or find out about other things that you do, like P3 Express, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and to see what you're up to?
Okay, so I'm quite lucky with my name, Frank Turley. There are not many Frank Turleys in the world, which is fantastic. So if you go to LinkedIn and just type my name in, my name will come up. You can link to me. But my email address is frank@implaza.training. That's the easy one.
It'll be in the description. Go hunting, and there'll be a quick link to the Plaza site. There'll be quick links to Frank's email address and LinkedIn.
Brilliant.
Frank, this has been really helpful to unscramble the basics of what PRINCE2 is. And I think much more important, you've given us a really clear idea of why you should and shouldn't consider PRINCE2 and what some of the alternatives are. So thank you very much for your time, Frank.
You're very welcome, Mike. Always a pleasure to talk to you. All right. Bye-bye.
Please do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. I'll be creating loads more great project management content. So please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of it. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.